Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to another episode of Jumah Nights. We are now fast approaching the day of Arba'een, and we've been discussing the Khidma of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam. Today we want to discuss it through the light of Ziyarat Ashura, which is a blueprint for Khidma and how it should be. Ya li tharat al-Hussain. When we start reading Ziyarat Ashura, what is the thing that it begins with? We say Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah, Assalamu alayka ya Ibn Rasulillah, and we go on to list a number of salams and salutations that we send to Imam al-Hussain with all of these various titles, until we go on to say Assalamu alayka wa ala al-arwah allati hallat bifina'ik, alaykum minni jami'an salamullahi abadan ma baqitu wa baqiya al-laylu wa nahar. We say that we send our salams upon Imam al-Hussain and upon the souls that gave their lives in his honor, and that we are giving them salams from this moment until the days and the nights last, so forever. Why is there so much emphasis on salam in these ziyarat? What is it when we say salam and we say Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah? Why is there so much emphasis in every ziyarah that we recite? It always begins with this salam and us sending our salutations upon the Imam and his companions. Is it just a formality when we say Assalamu alayka? Is it a greeting? What is it? What does it actually mean? When we look at the definition of salam, there are two perspectives that we look at. First, we look at the Quranic perspective. In the Quran, Allah speaks about the concept of tahiyyah, and that is adab. Right? When we think about when we receive a guest into our house and we want to greet them, or we go to see somebody outside of our houses, we go to have a meal, or we would say salam and we would greet them in the best way possible. So that is one aspect of the salam, the adab. But in the culture of the Quran and the Ahlulbayt, we also see another meaning, and that meaning is of submission towards them. Submission towards Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam comes through this first line of Ziyarat Ashura, which is Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. And as we mentioned last week, salam is the highest level of submission. If we just quickly take a few look at a narration with regards to the meaning of salam, what do we see? We see in a narration in Bahar al-Anwar in volume number 82, page number 307, from Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. It's narrated in Misbah al-Sharia. He says, وَالسَّلَامْ اسْمٌ مِّنْ أَسْمَاءِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى أَوْدَأَهُ خَلْقُهُ. He says that salam is one of the names of Allah, that which He has left for His creation. لِيَسْتَعْمِلُوا مَعْنَاهُ فِي الْمُعَامَلَاتِ وَالْأَمَانَاتِ وَالْإِنصَافَاتِ. He says, so that they can use this name of Allah in their trading and in their resolving disagreements. And he says, وَتَصْدِيقِ مُصَاحَبَتُهُمْ فِيمَا بَيْنَهُمْ وَصِحَةَ مُعَاشَرَتِهِمْ. And to strengthen the relations between them and to make their lives basically correct upon this salam. So the Imam says, فَإِنْ أَرَدْتَ أَن تَضَعَ السَّلَامُ مَوْضِعُهُ. If you want to put the salam in its correct place, وَتُؤَدِّي مَعْنَاهُ فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهُ وَلْيَسْلُمْ مِنْكَ دِينُكَ وَقَلْبُكَ وَأَخْلُقُ. He says that if you want to give the salam its correct position and to actually fulfill its meaning, then be God conscious and be in submission in terms of your religion, in terms of your heart, and in terms of your intellect, such that the darkness of ma'asi, of sins, does not cloud it. It doesn't take away from your salam. It doesn't make it an incorrect salam. He says, and let the two angels on your shoulders be in submission, and do not scare them or turn them away from your bad actions. Then the Imam says, فَإِنَّ مَنْ لَمْ يُسَلِّمْ مِنْهُ مَنْ هُوَ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ فَالْأَبْعَدُ أَوْلَى. Then the Imam says, for the one that doesn't make the one that is close to him safe, then the further one is even worse, of course. Right? So he's making a point of akhlaq here. You start with the people that are close to you. You honor them. You give them a level of love and honor. Right? This is all part of the salam. Then the Imam goes on to say, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَدَأِ السَّلَامُ مَوَاضِعُهُ هَذِهِ. He says, as for the one who is not able to give his salam this level of position that I have just described, what was that? That they strengthen the relations using them, that they bring their actions, their taqwa, that they submit in terms of their deen, in terms of their aql, in terms of their heart. that they don't sin and they don't ruin that salam, that they keep their angels on their shoulders safe from their evil actions, that they keep their friends safe, that they keep their enemies safe. This is the person he's speaking about. He says that if the one that doesn't do that, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَذَ السَّلَامُ مُوَاضِعُهُ هَذِهِ, the one that can't do that, فَلَا سِلْمٌ وَلَا سَلَامٌ وَكَانَ كَاذِبًا فِي سَلَامِهِ. He says that for the one that can't do that, then there is no silm, there is no submission, there is no salam, and he's a liar in his salam. He says, وَإِنْ أَفْشَاهُ فِي الْخَلْقِ, even if he spreads it among all of the creation, he would be a liar in that salam. This is the meaning of salam when we say Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. There's a level of submission here that goes very, very deep in the thaqafah of Ahlulbayt alayhimus salam. Do we even think about this when we are reciting Ziyarat Ashura? When we say salam to Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, does it have all of these dimensions? Or is it that we are saying salam as just lip service? Is it that we are reciting it as a ritual and this is how we've been taught to recite it, so we're going to recite it like that? Or is there a depth to that salam when we say it? Is there submission in that salam when we say it? Because let's be honest, after this long definition of what salam is and what it's supposed to do, which one of us can say that he's truthful in his salam? Which one of us can say that we are not from here where he says فَلَا سِلْمٌ وَلَا سَلَامٌ وَكَانَ كَاذِبًا فِي سَلَامِهِ? Which one of us can say that we are not from this if we do not exhibit all of the above mentioned descriptions? This is somewhere where we lack in our service to Imam al-Hussein, and we're only in the first few lines of Ziyarat Ashura. With regards to Khidma, this is the first step, submission, salam towards Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. We have another narration with regards to the salam in Al-Kafi, in Kitab al-Hujjah. We have a narration from Dawood ibn Kathir al-Raqi. He says, I said to Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, Ma ma'na as-salami ala Rasulillah. What is the meaning of salam upon Rasulullah? What does Imam al-Sadiq say? فقال إن الله تبارك وتعالى لما خلق نبيه ووصيه وابنته وابنيه وجميع الأئمة وخلق شيعتهم أخذ عليهم الميثاق. He says, indeed, when Allah created His messenger, His successor, His daughter, and His two sons, and all of the Imams, and He created the Shia for them, He took upon them a covenant. This is the covenant that we were speaking about last week when we spoke about the mithaq in the Quran, and we mentioned that the wilayah was part of that mithaq. The Imam says, أخذ عليهم الميثاق وأن يصبروا ويصابروا ويرابطوا وأن يتقوا الله. He says that He took upon them the covenant that they will be patient, they will persevere, and they will seek a connection, and that they should be God conscious. And He promised them that He will give them the Ard al-Mubarakah and the Haram al-Amin. So He's saying here that through this salam, this is a renewal of the covenant that we made before being created, when we were just in Alam al-Arwah. And we made this covenant to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala where we acknowledged that He was our Lord, we acknowledged that Rasulullah was the messenger, and we acknowledged all of the Imams alayhimus salam. The Imam says that part of that mithaq was also that we would be patient and we would persevere and we would seek a connection. Which connection is this speaking about? We see this in the Quran as well. This is mentioning one of the ayats of the Quran. And He says that He promised them that He will give them a land that is blessed and a place that is safe. This is in the time of the dhuhr of the Imam of our time. This is a clear indication towards the kingdom of the Imam of our time. When we look in the Quran, we see this ayah in Surah Al-Imran. In verse number 200, Allah says after the Basmala, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اصْبِرُوا وَصَابِرُوا وَرَابِطُوا وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. He says, O you who believe, have patience, persevere, and seek a connection, and be God conscious, لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ, in the hope that you may be successful. In the narrations of the Ahlulbayt alayhimus salam, they make it very clear that the seeking a connection part in this ayah is with regards to the Imam of our time. They say that the sabr is with regards to ta'ah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the rabt is with the Imam of our time. The link, the connection is with the Imam of our time. That is what salam means. When we say Salamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah, we are not only sending salam upon Imam al-Hussein, we are renewing our covenant towards the Ahlulbayt alayhimus salam, and we are renewing our promise that we will stand with his son, Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. We are renewing our understanding of the Hussaini mission, that all of this is for the service of the Imam of our time. What we've also seen in the meaning of salam that we have read in both of those narrations is that it's not something that can just be said. It is something that is done by the limbs. Even in the first narration, we saw that this is to do with taqwa, with regards to how you honor the people around you, with regards to how you can stay away from ma'asi, from sins. And here we can see that there's a clear link to the Imam of our time. So it's clear that this salam is not something that can just be said on your tongue. It's something that has to be also accompanied by the actions of the limbs. And it's also dependent upon the submission one has towards the Messenger and the Ahlulbayt alayhimus salam. That is what determines how truthful that individual's salam actually is, whether his actions are in accordance with that salam. What does this mean when we try to look at it in the context of al-Khidma al-Hussainiyah? What does it mean when we say that we are serving Imam al-Hussein? It means that we are serving him with submission, with full understanding of his aims and his mission. Because of course, submission between a servant and his master can only be achieved when the servant is aware of what his master wants. Most of us, we know nothing about our master, let alone his ideology and his aims and his mission. Many of the time we have this excuse, we say, no, our Imam is in ghaiba. So how are we supposed to know? How can we just have to wait for him to come back? No, that's not the case at all. Even within the time of the ghaibah, we've gone through the narrations many times in our episodes previously. We are expected to have ma'rifah of the Imam of our time even while he is in ghaibah. And only then we will have ma'rifah in the dhuhur. If we don't have ma'rifah in the ghaibah, we're not going to have ma'rifah in the dhuhur. So that's not an excuse. This is what we understand here from the first few lines of Ziyarat Ashura. Just the salam upon Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam is one that holds an intense level of depth and something that we should be thinking about when we recite these ziyarat. And it's also very important to realize that this covenant is one that is everlasting. When we speak about the salam to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, we see that this is a covenant that is there from then, from the mithaq, from the time that we were created and we were just souls. From that time until the time that we live today, until the day of judgment. This is the covenant. And we can see that very clearly from the indication of the kingdom of Imam Sahib al-Zaman. That is something that we are still working towards and is still relevant in our time. We see that the ziyarah then continues to make some aqaidi points with regards to the martyrdom of Imam al-Hussein. And then the ziyarah gets to the point where it's speaking about the concepts around which most of the ziyarah is based. And that is al-wala wal-bara'. It's speaking about the allying with Ahlulbayt alayhimus salam and enmity with their enemies and disassociation. So the Imam teaches us to say, فَلَعَنَ اللَّهُ أُمَّةً أَسَّسَتْ أَسَاسَ الظُّلْمِ وَالْجَوْرِ عَلَيْكُمْ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ. We say, may Allah's damnation and curses be upon a ummah, a nation that put the foundations in for you to be oppressed and for tyrannical rulers to be above you Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. وَلَعَنَ اللَّهُ أُمَّةً دَفَعَتْكُمْ عَنْ مَقَامِكُمْ وَأَزَالَتْكُمْ عَنْ مَرَاتِبِكُمُ الَّتِي رَتَبَكُمُ اللَّهُ فِيهَا. We say that may Allah's damnation and curses be upon a nation that took you out of your positions, from your ranks, and moved you from the ranks that Allah Himself placed you in. We see here very clear bara'ah and concepts of bara'. We say here again, وَلَعَنَ اللَّهُ أُمَّةً قَتَلَتْكُمْ وَلَعَنَ اللَّهُ الْمُمَحِّدِينَ لَهُمْ بِالتَّمْكِينِ مِنْ قِتَالِكُمْ بَرِئْتُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَإِلَيْكُمْ مِنْهُمْ وَمِنْ أَشْيَائِهِمْ وَأَتْبَاعِهِمْ وَأَوْلِيَائِهِمْ. We say, may Allah's curse be upon a nation that killed you and the ones who set the foundations for this to happen. And I seek dissociation towards Allah and towards you from them and from their followers and from those who ally with them. So this is the concept of bara'ah, which comes first before wala. These are all things that we disassociate from. Those who killed Imam al-Hussein, those who set out the path for Imam al-Hussein to be killed, those who set the ideology that was in enmity to the Ahlulbayt alayhimus salam. And we've spoken about this in previous episodes. If you go back to the episodes about bara'ah, we spoke about this in a little bit more detail with regards to the lines of Ziyarat Ashura and how they actually affect our lives and our thoughts today. I would recommend all of you to go back and watch those episodes, and if not, then at the very least, just the episode that was called The Philosophy of Disassociation, of Bara'. And that is where we speak about the level of importance that the Imams put in exposing the false ideology that was placed after the death or the martyrdom of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that was one of the main aims of Imam al-Hussein, to expose that false ideology. So most of these disassociations are ideological in their very nature. When we speak about Bara'ah, it is ideological in its very nature. It is about the ideas that were put forward against Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Do you not see this ideology, this plagued ideology, even within us today? Putting aside all of the other people, those who don't follow the school of Ahlulbayt alayhi salam, even us as followers of the Ahlulbayt alayhi salam, in our understanding of religion, in our actions, in the things that we do as communities, do we not still have the plague of the Saqifa ideology within us? Of course we do, even if we don't realize it. And we'll speak about some of these barriers to Khidma of Imam al-Hussein later on in the episode. But when we look at these lines, look at the lines that are mentioned here. That we say, لَعَنَ اللَّهُ أُمَّةً دَفَعَتْكُمْ عَنْ مَقَامِكُمْ وَأَزَالَتْكُمْ عَنْ مَرَاتِبِكُمُ الَّتِي رَتَبَكُمُ اللَّهُ فِيهَا. That we curse a nation that took the Imams out of the positions that they were in. Are we not from those who do that? In our minds, in our philosophies, in our ideologies, are the Imams our priority? Are they the reason that we wake up in the morning and do what we do in our careers? Can any of us say that every day that we wake up, we are serving the Imam of our time? The same way that Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam said, لَوْ أَدْرَكْتُهُ لَخَدَمْتُهُ أَيَّامَ حَيَاتِي. If I was to see him, I would have served him for every single day of my life. Are we fulfilling that? Are we fulfilling that service towards Imam Sahibul Asr wa Zaman and in turn the mission of Imam al-Hussein? These are all questions to just think about, and we will go further into the discussion as the episode goes on. The ziyarah continues and we say, إِنِّي سِلْمٌ لِمَنْ سَالَمَكُمْ وَحَرْبٌ لِمَنْ حَارَبَكُمْ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ. This is a declaration of war. When we say that we are at war with those who are at war with you, and we are allying with those who ally with you, are these things that have already finished? No, the ziyarah says إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ, until the day of judgment. So there are people till today that are allying with Ahlulbayt alayhi salam, and there are people till today that are at enmity with the Ahlulbayt alayhi salam. When we speak about the killers of Imam al-Hussein, are they all gone? Are they all finished? Let's see what the Imam has to say about this. When we look in Tafsir al-Ayashi, we have a narration from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. It's mentioned from one of the companions. He says, Muhammad ibn al-Khat is his name. He says, Imam al-Sadiq said to him, Tanzul al-Kufa, do you go to Kufa? Qultu na'am. He said, yes, I do go to Kufa. And the Imam says, فَتَرَوْنَ قَتَلَةَ الْحُسَيْنِ بَيْنَ أَظْهُرِكُمْ. Do you see the killers of Imam al-Hussein in and among you? The companion says, قَالَ قُلْتُ جُعِلْتُ فِدَاكَ مَا رَأَيْتُ مِنْهُمْ أَحَدًا. He says, I have not seen any of them left. I have not seen any of the killers of Imam al-Hussein in Kufa. The Imam says, قال فإذا أنت لا ترى القاتل إلا من قتل أو من ولى القتل ألم تسمع إلى قول الله عز وجل. The Imam says, if you do not see the killer to be except for the one that actually killed or oversaw the killing, then what do you say about the saying of Allah in the Quran? The Imam goes on to recite the ayah of the Quran, قل قد جاءكم رسل من قبلي بالبينات وبالذي قلتم فلما قتلتموهم إن كنتم صادقين. Allah says, say to the Prophet, indeed messengers came before me with proofs بالبينات وبالذي قلتم, and that which you guys have said. So why did you kill them if you were truthful? Why did you kill the prophets that came before? At the time of Rasulullah, were there people that had killed prophets? No, they weren't. But Allah tells him to make muhajaja upon them by calling them the killers of Rasul that came before. The Imam says, فَأَيُّ رَسُولٍ قَبْلَ الَّذِي كَانَ مُحَمَّدٌ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَعَلِي بَيْنَ أَظْهُرِهِمْ. He says, which Rasul was among them before Rasulullah? وَلَمْ يَكُنْ بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ إِيسَى رَسُول. He says there was no Rasul between Muhammad and Isa. So there was no Rasul between Rasulullah and Isa. So why is Allah calling them the killers of prophets? The Imam gives the explanations. He says, إِنَّمَا رَضُوا قَتْلَ أُولَٰئِكَ فَسَمُّوا قَاتِلِينَ. He says they were happy and they were pleased with the killing of those. So they were called also as killers. So you see that there are people that live even after all of the killers of Imam al-Hussein that were there on Ashura, that actually committed the act of killing, that were also called the killers of Imam al-Hussein in Kufa. When he says that they were happy and pleased for the Imam to be killed, it doesn't necessarily mean that they were clapping their hands and they were having parties over it. No. It means that they were people that allowed for this to happen. When we talk about muwahhideen, those people who actually led the foundations, is those people that didn't do anything as well to stop it. Those people are being counted as qatalat al-Hussein. So if those people had that responsibility at the time of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, do we not have that responsibility today? If we are not doing anything to avenge Imam al-Hussein, if we are not doing anything to call out this cry when Imam Sahib al-Zaman comes and we say, Ya al-Tharat al-Hussein, if we're not doing anything to achieve that, then we could very much so be those very people that we are cursing when we say, may Allah curse the ones who paved the foundations and paved the way for them to be killed. So when we think about dissociation and bara'a is, the point of it is that when I say this la'na, when I say these curses upon these individuals in Ziyarat Ashura, it is because I don't want to be like them. I don't want to be somebody that ignored my Imam. I don't want to be somebody that doesn't have ma'rifah of my Imam. I don't want to be somebody that isn't working towards the mission of my Imam. That is what we are cursing here. We're cursing those individuals that didn't have these characteristics. So we want to be people that do have these characteristics. This is khidma of Imam al-Hussein. And this is the depth of dissociation that we don't realize. This is the depth that begins in the mind and the heart. The mind and the heart are the places where Iman grows. When we have belief in our mind and in our hearts, it is those very seeds in our minds and our hearts that translate onto our tongues, that translate into our limbs and our actions. If the seeds are rotten in our heart and in our mind, we are not prioritizing the Imam. We are not taking him out of the position that Allah put him in. Because if we are taking the Imam out of the position that Allah put him in our minds and in our hearts, those seeds are rotten. Our actions will never have tawfiq. They will never be supported by the Imam of our time, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if the seeds themselves are rotten. And that's why the first step, even before submission, is ma'rifah. When we speak about the ta'ah of the Imam, it only comes after ma'rifah. So ma'rifah is the beginning, knowing the Imam, knowing his mission, knowing his aims, knowing his ideology, knowing his philosophy. And then only after that, when we have that in our minds and our hearts locked in, and those seeds are pure seeds, waiting to grow, at that point then our actions will be naturally in service to the Imam of our time. But it begins with ma'rifah. And the second step is submission, salam. Salam upon Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. That is our submission. And then the third step is disassociation. Disassociation from all evil and all oppression. So that we are overall leaning towards the service of the Imam, not towards the foundations for the Imam to be killed. This is the philosophy of Ziyarat Ashura, that we are to pave the foundations for the Hussein of our time. Then we go on to read in Ziyarat Ashura, after all of the la'nas on the specific individuals, we make a dua. We say, فَأَسْأَلُ اللَّهُ الَّذِي أَكْرَمَ مَقَامَكَ وَأَكْرَمَنِي بِكَ. He says, I ask Allah, the one who gave you this position and the one who gave me the honor of being one of your followers, أن يرزقني طلب ثأرك مع إمام منصور من أهل بيت محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. We see here that the dua that we make in Ziyarat Ashura is what? That Allah grants me the opportunity to be able to seek your vengeance. This is the vengeance of Imam al-Hussein's blood مع إمام منصور من أهل بيت محمد. With the Imam from Ahlulbayt alayhi salam. Is speaking about the Imam of our time. So we see here that Ziyarat of Imam al-Hussein, the Ziyarat of Ashura, is giving you a complete blueprint. It's telling you all of the steps. Start with submission, then go on to bara'ah, then go towards the Imam of your time. The Imam of your time, and make dua. As we know in the culture of Ahlulbayt, dua without action is like having a bow without bowstring to shoot an arrow. Can you shoot an arrow without bowstring? You can't. The culture of Ahlulbayt alayhi salam is that when you make dua, you have to have action alongside it to make it true, to make it happen. It can't be that you just make dua and you hope that Allah is going to give you it just without doing anything. No, you make dua and you actually put actions towards it in order for it to become true. And we continue with this dua. We say, Allahumma ja'alni indaka wajihan bil Hussain alayhi salam fi dunya wal akhirah. يا أبا عبد الله إني أتقرب إلى الله وإلى رسوله وإلى أمير المؤمنين وإلى فاطمة وإلى الحسن وإليك بموالاتك وبالبراءة ممن قاتلك ونصب لك الحرب. You see here, we say, Oh Allah, make me wajihan bil Hussain. Make me someone who is focused and facing towards Imam al-Hussain. You see here in these lines, it's showing you the relevance of Imam al-Hussain and his mission in our time today. When we say, make me wajih towards Imam al-Hussain, make me have his ma'rifah, make me focus on his mission, make me focus on his aims, so that I can support his son, Imam Sahib al-Zaman, the Imam al-Mansur. And this is what Ziyarat Ashura is. It's renewing our covenant of khidmah towards Imam al-Hussain and towards the Imam of our time. All of the ziyarah gives you this level of blueprint. And this is where I want to go into layers with regards to wala and bara. As I've already mentioned, the first layer is ourselves. When we speak about wala and bara, the first layer is ourselves. In our minds and in our hearts, are we free of the ideology of Saqifa? Are we completely prioritizing the Imam of our time? Are we completely prioritizing the service towards Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam? If not, then our wala and bara has failed. The second layer is of our families and our communities on a social perspective. When we go towards these programs and we have these gatherings for Muharram, is the priority in our minds the service towards the Imam of our time? Is it the priority in our minds when we are doing the walk between Najaf and Karbala? Is it the priority in the minds of the people who do ziyarah of Imam al-Hussain in millions every year? Don't get me wrong at all. These are all beautiful things and things that we should do. And these are things that are truly manifestations of the mercy and love of Imam al-Hussain. There's honestly no other description I can give to it other than that. But the question is, have we cracked the code? Do we all stand together against oppression and evil wherever it's taking place around the world? Or are we divided in the name of other issues? Are we divided as a community that all claims to love Imam al-Hussain, all claims to want to walk on the path of Imam al-Hussain, but when it comes to standing against oppression and evil, do we stand united or do we stand divided? Is it that one group said something, so now this other group, to spite the other group, will say the opposite? This group will say, we need to focus on this tragedy that's happening around the world. This other group will say, well, what's the importance of that tragedy? Just to be opposite to this group. The third layer is our politics. That's to say, if we even have politics at this current moment in time. When we say with regards to the Shia figures that have influence in politics, are they individuals that are putting importance towards the service of the Imam of our time, or are they not? That is a very important question to ask. In the East, prior to the West, in combating the evil of today on a political level, the Yazidi ideology of today, are we focused on it or are we not? When there are groups who try to do this, are we united in that effort or are we divided under other issues? These are all very fundamental questions to ask. When we talk about the khidmah of Imam al-Hussain, it is a collective covenant that we took as Shia. This is something that we should all be doing together, and this should be a name that unites us politically as well. When we are combating evil, when we are looking to drive out the problems that we have in our society, in our politics, in our countries, are we all united in the service of Imam Sahib al-Zaman? That's the third layer. That's a level of politics that we haven't even reached. When we speak about politics, it's very limited when we talk about the Shia influence in politics all around the world. Then we have the fourth layer, which is the universal layer, which represents the aim of Imam Sahib al-Zaman, which is what we see in the narrations. يَمْلَأُ الْأَرْضَ قِسْطًا وَعَدْلًا بَعْدَمَا مُلِئَتْ ظُلْمًا وَجَوْرًا. That he will fill the earth with equity and justice, the same way that it was filled with tyranny and oppression. So this is an aim that is universal all around the world. Where are we with that? When we think about universal and actually bringing our ideologies all across the world, where are we with that? We don't even know where to begin We don't even know what are the stepping stones to one day get to that at this point. We are so far behind in the aims of the Imam of our time that we aren't even able to think of what we're going to get to when we're universal. Some of you might be thinking, yeah, but that's the Imam's role. And you're right. When the Imam comes, he is going to be the one that is able to perfect that. But as his Shia, do we not even have an idea of what that's going to look like? Let's start by even actually discussing that. When we look at our education, where's our education in the West? Where are our schools and our academics and our thinkers? Where's our healthcare that we provide for ourselves? Who are we depending on for healthcare? When we think about law and governance, who are we depending on for law and governance? When we speak about our livelihoods, who are we depending on for livelihoods? All of these things are systems that we haven't even thought about. We haven't even looked into how we're going to start these fundamental things that every society needs to live, just as a society, as a community. In many of our centers today, there aren't even facilities for things like burials. Very simple things, but we don't have them. In many of our communities, we don't have schools for our children. There are many people just growing up and they are learning from going to mosque, listening on the minbar. That's all they have in terms of their religious education. We don't have anything to help with regards to healthcare. When our communities here had the problem of COVID or had the problem of needing a vaccine, how many of our communities were able to say, we're going to vaccinate you, we're going to make our center a vaccination center, or we are going to buy vaccines before the UK has them? Which one of us can do that? Our communities are very far behind in that. We have to start first of all with the second layer, which is the layer of families and communities. If we can't do that properly, then the third layer of politics and the fourth layer of universal are far out of our reach. Even if we start off just with the basic understanding of education. Education for Shi'ism and the ideology of Muhammad Ali salam. We aren't able to make our ideas even universal. Even with the presence of social media, with all of the globalization that has occurred, even our ideology has not been able to trump the other ideologies universally, let alone having a universal healthcare system, having a universal governance system. All of these things are very far out of our reach if we can't even do the basics of being able to spread the ideology of Ahlulbayt first and foremost, because that's where it all boils down to originally. And even in Ziyarat Ashura, it boils down to ideology. And this might sound crazy, the things that I'm saying might sound crazy, but we are the Shia of Ahlulbayt. We are supposed to be useful individuals, people that give something to the world. We're here sending la'na on their ashya. We're sending la'na upon the ashya of Banu Umayyah and the people that killed Imam al-Hussain. Why are we sending la'na on them? We're sending la'na on them because they were far away from all that was good. They only moved towards that which was evil. They never looked towards that which was useful or brought good into the world. If we're exactly like them in being absolutely useless to the world and to the Ahlulbayt alayhimus salam, then it makes us no different to them. If we are followers of Ahlulbayt alayhimus salam, we should have something that is special. We can't be like every other community. We have to hold ourselves to higher standards. And this is all achievable with the Khidma of Imam al-Hussain. What do we read in Ziyarat Arba'in? We will read this, inshallah, in the coming days. We will all be reading the ziyarah. What do we say? We are speaking about Imam al-Hussain in the ziyarah, and we say about him, فَأَعْذَرَ فِي الدُّعَاء ومنح النصح وبذل محجته فيك ليستنقذ عبادك من الجهالة وحيرة الضلالة. We say that Imam al-Hussain called towards you. He called towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He gave advice and he sacrificed his soul for you. Why? So that he could take your servants out of ignorance and out of the confusion of misguidance. This is what we're speaking about here. Taking us out of jahala. What is the opposite of jahala? It's aql. From being ignorant, not useful, not bringing anything good, to being useful, having that intellect. Having that intellect on a personal level, individual level, and then collective level. And building up until we are a nation that is worthy of having the Imam of our time come for his duhur. And this is what we spoke about in our episodes that preceded, when we spoke about the actions of the Shia that affect the reappearance. The actions of the Shia make a big difference in what happens in the reappearance. And that is what Imam al-Hussain does. His mission is supposed to take us out of ignorance and take us out of confusion and misguidance towards guidance as a community, all of us, and to show our excellence as a community, as the followers of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam. Does Rasulullah not say, Inna al-Hussain misbah al-huda wa safinatun najat? That Hussain is the lantern of guidance and the ark of salvation. That the one who boards this mission of Imam al-Hussain, it cannot be that he's not successful. Can we say that our communities are successful in the way that the Ahlulbayt alayhi salam want us to be? We're so far from those ultimate aims of the Imam of our time that it's actually scary. It's a joke when we think about it. We're very, very far from those aims. And that is all with the disclaimer that the khidmah that currently exists for Imam al-Hussain is unexplainable. It's beyond beauty. For me to call it as beautiful is an understatement. When we go to Arba'een, when we see the Mawakib, we see the service of Imam al-Hussain and the selflessness of people, that is something that is truly beautiful. But what could take it to the next level is that if as a collective there was an intellectualization of the aims of Imam al-Hussain, there was understanding intellectually of where should we be heading towards the mission of Imam al-Hussain as a collective. And of course there are barriers that are stopping us from being able to achieve this level of khidmah. And that's what I want to speak about as well today. I want to speak about the barriers that are stopping us from achieving this. When we look at our communities, the first problem that we have is a lack of community education. When we think about the level of education that is being provided to people in our communities, is terribly low. If we take the average Shi'i, for example, that goes to university, their situation will be what? That they'll be very weak in Arabic, know very little about their Imams. All that they will have at most is an emotional connection to the Imams, alayhimus salam. And that emotional connection, don't get me wrong, it's priceless. It's invaluable. There's no price you can put on it. But it is void of any intellectual thought. That individual loves Imam al-Hussain, and he genuinely, with all his heart, he loves Imam al-Hussain, but he hasn't gone out of his way to find out about Imam al-Hussain. What does Imam al-Hussain want from me? Because as a servant and someone who loves his master, you want to know what does your master want so that I can make him the most happy. That is what we are lacking, the intellectual thought. And on top of that, there's a lack of thinkers in our community and a severe lack of scholarship. When we see that deviant ideologies pop up here and there, what happens? We see that a significant amount of youth are lost to this movement or that movement. Then you look around to see what's happening, what's being done to address this. Everyone is silent. It's as if they want to just put the issue under the rug. No one wants to speak about it. And even if they do speak about it, they speak about it in a way that is not intellectual. They just say, oh, this individual, don't listen to him. That individual, he's lost. He's not a scholar. He didn't study in... Baba, address the intellectual points that he has made and defeat the intellectual points. If you're a scholar, if you're a thinker, this is the role of the scholar, to respond to these doubts. And that's something that we are heavily missing in our communities. Every time a new ideology comes up, a wave of youth get taken with it. And you begin to think, why aren't these doubts being answered? Why aren't these problems being addressed? And when you look to see, you'll see the reason is that we lack thinkers, we lack scholarship. We don't have the volume of scholars and speakers to be able to respond to all of these things. And even if we do, they're all divided in different camps. You'll see one individual, he says, that individual, he does taqleed of X marja, and I do taqleed of Y marja, so I'm not going to work with him to solve the problem that the whole community has. Why? Because he does taqleed of that marja, X marja, and I don't like X marja. And I'm childish, so I'm not going to work with him. This is the situation, unfortunately, that we're in. That people will refuse to work together to solve issues in the community because this person, this taqleed, and that person. Yeah, but all of you, you love Imam al-Hussain, alayhi salam. And this is khidmah of Imam al-Hussain. Khidmah towards Imam of our time. This is a theological battlefield. The battlefield is not only with swords and shields and with guns. No, the battlefield is also a theological one. At the time when the reappearance of the Imam comes closer, the biggest battlefield is the theological battlefield. It's not the battlefield of guns and having to kill people on the battlefield. No. The theological battlefield is the most important, and that's why education is the most important. Having these thinkers and scholars is very important to all of the communities so that we can have people to address these doubts and speak about them intellectually. And another problem is also pseudo-intellectualism. When we look at the groups that are formed today, there'll be people that consider themselves to be intellectuals. They'll come and they will speak against things in Aza that are symbols. One person will come and he'll speak against the latam of Imam al-Hussein. Another one, he'll speak against the alam of al-Abbas. Another one will say, why is the speaker holding a baby during the majlis? And these are all things that are cultural and we need to move away from them. The intellectual thought in our community is so deprived that there will be uneducated people and youth among the community that will say, yeah, he's right actually. Why do we have an alam? Why isn't there a specific narration about, I don't know, latam and the way that we do latam? Or why isn't there this? Or why isn't there that? They fail to understand the basic principle of art and symbolism in the Aza of Imam al-Hussein. That's where our intellectual thought has reached. That we're here questioning little symbols and art. That's all. That's all these things are. When we speak about the alam, these are things that connect us towards Imam al-Hussein. And of course, I'm not saying that this art and symbolism is the be-all and end-all. But this, even understanding of this art and symbolism is not present within the youth, such that they can rationalize it for themselves. So that when these doubts come, they don't just run away and say, okay, we're not going to do any of these stuff because now we have doubts in it. They should be rationalizing it to themselves. These are all simple things that all of us have done growing up in the marasim of Aza of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. This is one of the biggest barriers to Khidma of Imam al-Hussein, the lack of education. And it should be addressed through creation of schools, through the creation of a curriculum, through the creation of a ideological basis that is based upon the teachings of Ahlulbayt alayhi salam. And to create centers to stop this division as well among different scholars and different thinkers and speakers. Because when we have a lack of speakers, it doesn't matter really which different groups they're part of. If they are thinkers and they have their mindset on serving Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, then they will be able to figure something out together. MashaAllah, we do have centers now that are trying to get rid of this division. And they do have lectures and audiences that are inclusive of different groups of people. And inshallah, that's a good direction to move in. And we hope that at least even in London, that we can move towards these ideals and work towards common goals under the banner of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. Another barrier to the khidmah of Imam al-Hussein, and I hope this doesn't upset anybody, but it's fixation on the rituals of Ashura. It's normal that in the first 10 days of Muharram, you'll open Twitter and there will definitely 100% be at least one argument about tatbir. There'll be one individual saying tatbir is haram. You guys are messing with our religion. They're calling them names. They're calling them all sorts of, they're cursing their maraji'. They're saying your marja allows tatbir, la'na on him. And then you'll see the response on the other side. Oh, the people who don't do tatbir, la'na on them. La'na on their maraji', la'na on their scholars. And this fixation is something that actually damages us and our khidmah completely. Because these people, they think that they're defending the rituals of Imam al-Hussein or speaking and defending the image of Imam al-Hussein. But in reality, what you're doing is you're taking the focus away from Imam al-Hussein and you're fixating it on a ritual like tatbir. And unfortunately, it makes these rituals themselves the goal. Right? One individual will say, why don't you give blood on Ashura? He's made that the goal. Or why don't you do tatbir on Ashura? He's made that the goal. Right? They make the whole argument with regards to this around the ritual itself, and they take away the focus from Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Because the rituals themselves are not the goal. They're meant to be a vehicle, a medium, a vessel through which you can reach Imam al-Hussein and you can connect with Imam al-Hussein. Not that that action itself is the be-all and end-all. The same way that we said about symbolism and art. When we look at these rituals like tatbir, like zanjir, these are expressions of mourning. It's not that your Shi'iness or how good of a Shi'a you are depends on whether you do these things or you don't do these things. It's not like the one who has done tatbir, he has reached the highest level of piety, and the one who doesn't, for example, has reached the lowest level of hell. And it's not the other way around either. All of these actions, they are only accepted and beneficial with the correct intention, which is reviving the affair of the Imam of our time. And of course, if you look at the rulings of the fuqaha, largely when we look at the rulings of the fuqaha with regards to tatbir and speaking about the image of Islam, it is down to the individual themselves to determine whether they are harming the image of Islam or not. And that is for each and every person to make the decision themselves. And many of the scholars, they have said that in fact, if it is not harming the image of Islam, so for example, it is being done in a private setting, then it is allowed and it is mustahab. And there are many other scholars as well who have said that it is not allowed in any circumstance. But that is as simple as it is. It is just a fatwa, right? Let people make their own decisions based on what they understand to be harming the image of Islam and not harming the image of Islam. What is more important is how are we working together to bring the mission of Imam al-Hussein to the rest of the world, not are you doing tatbir or are you not doing tatbir? That is not part of the reviving the affair. It's only reviving the affair when you do it with the correct intention of service towards Imam al-Hussein and khidma towards Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. What the fixation on these issues does is that it's actually a satanic ploy, in my understanding. It's that it is a satanic ploy to divide those who are Hussaini, those who love Imam al-Hussein and they share grander aims. It makes them argue about smaller issues. If we are arguing about tatbir and I curse your marja for it or you curse my marja for it, then we're never going to work together in the grand aims of Imam al-Hussein. Who benefits from that? Does Imam Sahib al-Zaman benefit from that, or does Shaitan benefit from that? Does Hussein benefit from that, or does Yazid benefit from that? Think about it. When we fixate on these issues, we are only dividing ourselves further. And this is not a time to be divided. This is a time for us to be united in our goals and our aims. The more of us there are, the more thinkers there are, the more understanding there is of the aims of Imam al-Hussein, of the service of Imam of our time, the more we are able to unite under one banner. And to some extent, there is unity with the name of Imam al-Hussein. We see in Arba'een all sorts of people, followers of different groups, people that are not even Muslim. They go to Arba'een, they go to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, and that is a name that unites us, but it needs to unite us even further on a social level, on a religious level, on a political level, on a universal level in the end. And that is the point at which Imam Sahib al-Zaman, when he comes, he will introduce himself as the son of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Once we have made that message of Imam al-Hussein and the mission of Imam al-Hussein universal. First and foremost, that is the aim, educationally, to spread the ideology of Imam al-Hussein and Ahlulbayt alayhim salam across the world. And we can only do that after having understood the aims of the ideologies of Imam al-Hussein and of Imam Sahib al-Zaman. And that is only through their narrations, the narrations of Ahlulbayt alayhim salam. All of these narrations are very, very important in understanding the philosophy of Imam al-Hussein. Kalamukum nur. Your words are light. This is what we say in Ziyarat Jami'. So that is the first step. And the second step is then spreading the knowledge of Ahlulbayt alayhim salam. A third barrier to khidmah is commercialization of the religion. When we think about speakers today, reciters today within the Shia world, we've begun to think of them as celebrities, and they think of themselves as celebrities. They've almost made the khidmah of Imam al-Hussein their entire source of income. There's nothing else that they do in their lives other than majalis, other than recitations, and they make the khidmah their entire source of income. What happens when you make something your entire source of income? You need the views now. You need the money to come from that now. So what does that then become? In your mind, you start to think, okay, in order to get views, what do I need to do? I need to create controversial content. I need to make content that everybody's going to watch. I need to make something, a video or a lecture that everybody's going to watch. Why? Because it's what they're speaking about. It's at the level that they're speaking about. So what does that then do? That further deepens the problem that we have with lack of intellectual thought. That only further deepens the issue that we have of lack of education, lack of intellectual thought. All of this in the name of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Taking away people from knowledge, taking away people from the ahadith and the deeper discussions that need to be had to discuss controversial things so that they can get views and they can get money from these videos. This is the problem that we are facing with our religion in today's age, the commercialization of religion. Or you see, for example, the reciters of eulogy. It's true that some of these reciters of eulogy, and especially when we go back in time, when we go to 50 years ago, 40 years ago, even 30 years ago, we see the reciters that were reciting purely for the love of Imam al-Hussein. Some of the most famous reciters in Pakistan, in India, in Iraq, in Iran, all of these reciters, they used to recite purely for the love of Imam al-Hussein. But what has that now become? There are reciters now that I've seen reciting, while their recitation, they're doing unspeakable things and they're humiliating people that are standing with them. Is this the khidmah of Imam al-Hussein now? Is it necessary that they are treated like celebrities? Is it necessary that they are paid in thousands and thousands of dollars each night? Is that the khidmah of Imam al-Hussein? What does that reciter have on his mind when he's making his next video and he puts out his studio recitation and he's there in the video and he's making actions and he makes sure that his hair is done correctly and he's wearing his newest black thobe? All of these things have taken not only the people that are watching it, but also the reciters themselves away from the true essence of khidmah. If the reciters themselves are taken away from the essence of khidmah, then how about the people that are consuming that same content? What is going to be the conclusion here? The whole community is going to become a community based on commercial value. This individual, he has 20 million views. We need to bring him to recite. Otherwise, people are not going to be happy. This individual, he only has 1,000 views on YouTube. Nobody knows him. He has a good voice, but nobody really knows him. So, what's the point of bringing him? This is where it becomes. It becomes celebrities and being able to put the biggest speaker and the best reciter on your poster so that most people come to your Hussainiyah and don't go to the other Hussainiyah that has a worse reciter or somebody that isn't as well known. That's what it's become. So this is where the khidmah of Imam al-Hussein is being lost in its essence, in its true essence. And if the people at the top are not able to prevent this commercialization, they're not able to prevent this understanding, this superficial understanding of Aza, then we'll be even further and further behind in our aims of service towards the Imam of our time. There's no point in a service towards the Imam al-Hussein, if it is not service towards the Imam of our time. We can call all of this service. We can call recitation service. We can call majalis service. If it doesn't have that essence, then there is no fa'idah in it. It's as Imam Ali alayhi salam said, لا خير في قراءة ليس فيها تدبر. There is no khair, there is no good in a recitation that doesn't have pondering in it. If it doesn't make the audience ponder, if it doesn't make the audience come out of that majlis thinking of how are they going to serve the Imam of their time, then there's no point in that majlis. If they're coming out and just thinking, wow, that was a great majlis, right? Because it got the whole crowd excited. Everybody was thinking, yeah, everybody was involved in the majlis. But it didn't actually leave a change in the philosophy of that individual in their mind. It didn't encourage them towards service towards the Imam of their time. Then there's no point in that majlis. And that's why we need to not lose track of the aims of khidmah. And we need to look at the saying of Imam al-Sadiq and think, what would Imam al-Sadiq do? When Imam al-Sadiq says, لو أدركته لخدمته أيام حياتي, when he says about Imam Sahib al-Zaman alayhi salam, that if I was to see him, then I would have served him for every single day of my life, what was Imam al-Sadiq speaking about? That's the question that I want everybody to leave this episode thinking about. What is Imam al-Sadiq speaking about when he is speaking about service? Once I can understand that, then I can work towards those aims, and inshallah I can become a true khadim of Imam al-Hussein. This is the aim of the khidmah of Imam al-Hussein, to serve the Imam of our time and to rise with him and to be able to call out, Ya Latharat al-Hussein. So to conclude, this is where we see the title of reviving the affair being met through these three aims. Number one, through ma'rifah of the Imam, so that we can understand what the Imam wants from us, what his aims are, what his philosophy and what his ideology is. That's the first step, knowing. Number two, the next step is submission. Being able to submit towards the aims of the Imam, being able to submit towards the ideology of the Imam and have it in our minds. And then the third step is having true service towards the Imam of our time. And this is the meaning of al-Khidma al-Hussainiyah. Inshallah, I hope these 2 episodes have been beneficial for you and have given you a good understanding with regards to khidmah and what we should be at least thinking about when we are thinking about the service towards Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam. Inshallah, it's going to be the last episode of Jumah Nights where you're going to be seeing me alone. And inshallah, for the next 5 episodes, we have something very excited planned for you. I want to thank everybody that's been tuning in from the first episode. And I like to think of Jum'ah Nights as somewhat a course. We've been through so many different topics from the angle of the Quran and the Sunnah. And even if you haven't watched any of the beginning episodes, I would urge you to watch all of the episodes in order whenever you get time. Inshallah, Jum'ah Nights will be ending with the 50th episode. And so far we have had 45. So I am thankful and grateful to all of you who have supported me and been able to watch the content. And I hope that you've benefited. So inshallah, we're going to be having a short break after the day of Arba'een. And we'll be back inshallah to end the last 5 episodes of Jum'ah Nights, and we've got some exciting things planned for you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.